No matter what anyone in Washington, D.C. will tell you, no matter what any member of the government, the Pentagon, or some of the alleged experts who go on TV say, the U.S. troops in Iraq and in Syria right now are little more than pawns to be played on a chessboard. They don't have any value. Their life literally means nothing to these people. Now, I know that may sound harsh, and I know a lot of people will argue against that, but the facts scream otherwise. Now, we've already known that 3 troops have already been killed earlier this year, but now 3 more have been wounded in the most recent attack on Monday. And at least so far, none have been killed, though one is reportedly in serious condition. And predictably, a lot of people are already saying, hey, we need to go after Iran. These Iran-backed groups in the region that keep attacking us, we need to go after them because that's what this is all about. It's always about Iran. Let's go and strike them because they're the ones who are ultimately in charge of all of this. Like, this comes out of nowhere. But listen, folks, I've been saying for many years, it is time to end these pointless deployments of our troops in Iraq and Syria who serve no value to America. They are not defending our interests. They are not producing any kind of increase to American national security. They are sitting in the desert with a target on their back, and these Iran-backed groups are attacking them because they're there, because they can. If we withdrew our troops from Iraq and from Syria, move them even elsewhere in the region, or even better yet, redeploy them back to the United States because they do not need to be there. If anyone is confused on that point, just consider all of these things that have been going on, especially since October 7th and the explosion of violence in the region. Has this deterred Iran from anything? Has this deterred any of these Iran-backed groups from anything? No, it hasn't done anything. Our interests are already not at risk because of these groups here. They pose dangers to the people that are in the area. They pose a danger to us because we're easily accessible. It's a hard fixed point on the ground. All the bad guys know where we are, and they're trying to get us constantly. This strike that happened on Monday was just the latest one. There has been others recently. Usually we try to shoot them down, but just imagine how foolish it is to put American troops on the ground that we allegedly value and just say, we want you to sit there and we'll see if you get killed in the next attack. Maybe the next one we'll have more luck. As we already know, we're on pins and needles right now finding out what Iran is going to do in retaliation for the Israeli strike against the Hania in Tehran last week. So we're already wondering if that's going to include the United States or not, because if the U.S. helps Israel and defends Israel, and especially if it strikes any targets in Iran, then suddenly our troops are going to be Iranian targets, not just these Iran-backed groups, but Iranian targets. And as I've told you many times, if Iran proper attacks our troops in there, our air defense and our missile defense systems that we have for these far-flung troops that are out in the middle of nowhere are not effective enough. They can penetrate those defenses, and they could kill not just 1 or 2 or 3, but they could kill a large number of Americans if they desired to do so. If we get into a war with Iran, which so many people are lusting for in Washington, D.C. But listen, this is something that I've been warning about for a long time. I want to show you just a couple of clips of something I said early this year on January 21st, when there was then another attack against some of our troops in the region. And you had Jack Keane and several others were at that time arguing that we should expand this into Iran. They were saying it then. This is January 21st. Look at my response. Our troops deserve to be protected by our country and preserved, and only used and put their life at risk if our national security is genuinely threatened. That's why they've signed up. That's why they serve. That's why we have an armed force. It is not to just put them in the middle of a damn desert with a target on their back and wait to see if they get killed. That is an abuse of our forces. That is a misuse of our armed forces and should not be done, and we need to stop it immediately. Now, someone who has 4 combat deployments, at least, 2 in the Iraq area, I know a lot about what I'm talking about there. I know what it's like to be on a very small base in Iraq where basically most you're doing is just defending yourself. I know exactly what that's like. And so I know what those troops face. When I was there, we didn't actually have any of those attacks during those times. That was 2009, but we did have the perimeter security. We're constantly on alert for all those kinds of things, and these guys do too on a daily basis. There's no value to it. We're not defended. Our interests are not improved because of that. It is so important to say we are not better because those troops are there, and we would not be any worse if they left, but our troops would be better. Now imagine, just put yourself for a moment in the family members of these troops. You're out there in the middle. You signed up to defend America. Now all of a sudden, for some reason, you're just sitting on a desert in the middle, or on a base in the middle of the Iraqi desert, or in the middle of the Syrian desert, or Jordan, somewhere out there, just sitting there, allegedly doing some kind of counter ISIS mission, which is fiction, by the way. But you're the family members there. So even if they are, all you're concerned about is their safety. You care about that. But if you know that they're actually not doing anything of value to America, they're left out there, no one's defending them, because the only way you can defend them is to get them out by leaving them there where these nefarious forces have access to them, to where they can launch drones, where they can launch rocket attacks, where they can launch other kinds of artillery or mortar shots. Then you have to wonder every day, are they going to get killed? Well, on January 28th of this year, that's exactly what happened. So on just 1 week after I made that previous video, this happened. I'm angry because I have been warning for months, and actually for years, that we risk losing American soldiers and their lives for no gain to our country in a way that was entirely avoidable. Now then, the worst outcome has happened, or maybe not the worst outcome. The worst outcome may yet come to pass after this, because how we respond to this will take everything in us to do the right thing, which means I have low confidence that we're going to do the right thing in the government, because so far we've done all of the worst things which have harmed our national security, have now resulted in our troops being killed, and if not handled properly, could result in us getting sucked into a war where even more American troops will be killed. Now, we amazingly did dodge the bullet there. We did not make it worse. And in fact, the response by the administration was about as good as you could get at that time, even though there were many people like Keane and some of these others that were advocating, lusting for an attack against Iran to go after it. The administration chose instead to hit 85 Iran-linked targets in Iraq and in Syria, which is they went after the people that actually launched that attack. So that was helpful then. And actually, for a while, there were diminished attacks against our troops. But like everything else, that's just a temporary fix. It's a Band-Aid. So we dodged that bullet there. But what's been done since? Absolutely nothing. Nothing has been done since. No changes. Nobody was withdrawn, which means those same troops are still on the ground in Iraq and in Syria doing nothing. They're still there with that strategic target on their back. And now on Monday, 3 more were harmed. Maybe one is still in the hospital. We don't know how he's going to be. But at what point do we finally say that our troops actually matter? I'm talking about the people, not troops, not in a generic term, not in this one single term, troops, meaning all these thousands of troops. I'm talking about the individual men and women who volunteer to serve our country to defend your interests. When do their lives actually count for something? I'm sick and tired of hearing all this stuff about how we love our troops. You're talking about politicians or lots of other people. We love our troops and we want to protect them. We want to give them, pay raises and all this kind of stuff. But then you won't do anything to actually defend them. And the answer is not, let's send more air defense systems. Let's send more counter battery radar, those kinds of things. That's not the right answer. The right answer is get them out of harm's way. Listen. When I volunteered to serve, everyone else who volunteered to serve understands tacitly, overtly, you may one day have to sacrifice your life in defense of our country. That's expected and it's understood, and it's no problem. I had no problem, would have no problem if that was required in the future. But what is very much a problem is to ask one of those people, any of us, to put their lives at risk for no reason. And that's what is the case right now for all those troops in Iraq and in Syria. All those men and women, those Americans who are sitting in those deserts today are still just waiting to find out if they're going to be the next targets. If the next time one of those drones is going to get through, or one of those rockets is going to penetrate the defenses, or if in the process of what Israel is doing to Iran, we get caught up in that and then we get into a war. That's still a possibility. Every time an American gets killed, there's enormous pressure on the president to do something. And of course, last time he did something, and it was a temporary fix. It slowed it down for a while. Then it came back up, as it's going to, because it's always going to be that way. It's self-evident. It's logical. It's rational. If you have American troops on the ground, there are so many groups in the Middle East that hate them for all the things that have been going on in the last 2 decades. So they're going to continually be a target. But they're not producing anything for America. That is so important to understand. Why do you want your troops, your men and women, your fellow countrymen putting their lives at risk every day for no reason? I mean, it's in my view, it's immoral and it's unethical. And I do have a lot of anger against our leaders who keep them there now. And it's easy because truly they're pawns on a board, because they're thinking, and I've heard it said, well, we can't withdraw because if we do, we'll look weak. It'll send the wrong signal. It'll mean Iran won, because Iran does want them out of the region. Others, these people do want them out of the region. That's true. They do. But at some point, we have to be mature. We actually have to be the adults in the room and say, I don't care whether you think it's good or not, Iran. I don't care whether you think it's a good idea, whether it happens to benefit you, some of these local Muslim groups. I don't care. I care about my interest. And if it makes sense and it's rational for us to withdraw them, that's what we should do. Because unlike these people, I value the lives of the American service people. I value the lives of the men, of the women who are there right now. I want them to live. I want them to be preserving our force so that if we ever get attacked by somebody and we need to go into fight to defend our country, that we have all of the resources that we have, all that we need. We have all the trained men and women that are able to do that. Not just to have their life pissed away in the desert somewhere because you don't want to send the wrong signal, which is nonsense. Because the only reason why these people have power over us right now is because we're there. If you withdraw those troops, if you just redeploy them even elsewhere in the Middle East, if you don't want to, lose the deployment capability, just put them in places where they actually are on a base that actually has better air defense or something, like out of the region completely, maybe in Saudi Arabia or in Kuwait, some other place like that, offshore on some of the ships where they're completely protected, and we still have the ability to project power anywhere in the region at any time that we need to. That's always there. That is obviously the best strategic situation. It deprives our opponents of the ability to target and kill Americans, and it preserves all of our ability to actually defend our interests should the need arise at any time. That's what makes the most sense. But we have leaders right now who are feckless, who are unwise, and who do not care about the lives of our troops. I don't care what they would say. And I know that they would all claim fealty to the troops. That's I don't care the words that come out of their mouths. Don't care. I care about the actions that happen. And you see, like this is what I'm sick and tired of. This is what happened to those 3 troops that were killed earlier this year when they came back to Dover, and they have this somber ceremony, and the president later said they risk it all. We'll never forget the sacrifices and service to our country, that the dozens of service members who were wounded and in recovery now. I don't care about that, and I don't want to hear about another one. The next time this happens, I don't want to see another Dover casket transfer where a flag-draped American coffin comes in, and so families are going to be grieving for the rest of their lives. They'll never recover fully from that kind of thing. The mothers, the fathers, the wives, the children, the brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, all of those things. Those people are from those 3 caskets that came back earlier are still in terrible grief. I don't want to see another one of those happen. I don't want another American family to have to pay the price because our leaders are feckless and unwilling to do what makes sense for our national security and value the lives, not of the pawns, like you're treating them, but of the men and the women who wear our uniform with pride. They need to be defended, not by air defense systems, not by missile carriers and whatever else in the area where they don't need to be, but by withdrawing them from pointless and needless harm's way. That's what we need to do, folks. And I don't want to have to make another one of these videos and after the fact of more Americans being killed, because if we don't get them out of there, it's almost inevitable that there's going to be further casualties. And every time it happens, the risk that the president comes under pressure to launch into Iran continues to grow up. and to rise and to get stronger, which, as I said back in January, could then cause us to get into a war where even more Americans get killed. Just think about how absurd that would be. Because we refuse to withdraw troops from Iraq and Syria, some get killed, and then finally we end up giving into pressure and go into war with Iran. And now that all these guys get targeted, and now that in a large war, many, many more Americans could be killed. All because we wouldn't do the right thing right now while we can to limit the vulnerability, to limit the exposure that we have, and to preserve our forces. You see how eminently wise that course would be. That's exactly what we should do. It just takes a little bit of courage, political courage, to take the heat and to do the right thing. It's difficult, but it's not that hard if we're just willing to try and not giving into these lusting warmongers who lust after going to war in Iran, oblivious to the cost. And the thing is that these guys who say this stuff have no bloody idea what they're even suggesting. They don't even know what they would do, what a war with Iran would look like, how it would be accomplished, what benefit it would give to the United States, how long would it take, how many more Americans may die, and then what happens next. Are you going to take out the mullahs? Are you going to bring in usher in a new government there? How would you do that? Who would do it? Would they be pro-American? Would you just be putting a different set of people in there who hate the United States? They have no power on this. They have no idea. They don't even have a concept. They just want to do it. And that is one of the many reasons that I have such antipathy to these people, because they don't even know what they want to suggest. They just love war. That alone to them is success. If we have a war with Iran, cool. That's what I've been wanting. We want to get rid of them. They don't even know how it would happen or what the day after would look like. There's no actual plan, much less a resourced plan, much less anything that has anything to do with American national security. That's one of the big problems. You need to understand what's at stake here. And I think that it's time that we put some pressure on our elected officials that say, how about you start actually valuing the lives of our service members? That's your deep dive for today, folks. We're going to come back. We got some more stuff to talk about in the Middle East with Ambassador Chaz Freeman this afternoon. And then we're also going to have Tony Shaffer on. We're going to get an update on what's going on in the Russia-Ukraine war. A lot of stuff going on. You're not going to want to miss any of it. Be sure and like and subscribe so that you're notified the next time that happens. Hit that little notification bell so that you don't miss any of these great things here. Be sure to share with your friends, and we'll see you this afternoon on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.